All right, let's do it. Let's update to 119. All right, we find ourselves back in IntelliJ once more, and in this tutorial, we're going to be updating our 118 fabric project to 119. So this is going to be actually more straightforward than you might think. Now, for those of you who have never updated a mod, you're going to probably be like, well, that's still quite a bit of work, which I will say that's actually not the case. This is actually easy. There have been updates from one version to another where the work is about 12 hours of non-stop coding. So we're actually going to be fine in this case. So what do we need to do? Well, first of all, we'll start with the fabric mod JSON and go through each of the JSON files, build.gradle, Gradle properties, and change all of those things, then update, and then we're going to proceed to the code. So right here, we want to change the depends. This is very important because otherwise our mod will say, hey, our mod needs 118x, and that's of course not right. Our mod will now need 119, and we also want to add this squiggly line. I'm not 100% sure what the squiggly line means. I think it means something like up until 119, although I'm not 100% sure. That's just how how Fabric basically has done it in their example mod. And the Fabric loader should be 14.6, so both of those things have to be changed, and then we're fine right here. In the tutorial mod Mixin JSON, we also want to change something, and that is the Java 16 can now be a Java 17. Very nice, very nice. All right, and then we can immediately go on to the build.gradle file. And we want to start by changing the snapshot up here. We either have this 0.10 or 0.11, and we want to change it to 0.12. Right, then we also need to go down right here to the dependencies, and luckily for us, Geckolib and also custom portal has already updated, so we can also update this. So Geckolib is just going to be Fabric 119, and then the version is 3.1.0, and the custom portal version is a beta 51-119 snapshot. And the same thing we want for this one as well. So we want a beta 51-119 snapshot. Right, and last but not least, we also want to go to the Gradle properties file, where of course we have to change quite a few things. So we want to change the micro version to 119. The yarn mappings are going to be 119 build.1, loader version 14.6. Then we can also change our mod version in theory, 119, there you go, that's fine. And then the fabric version is actually, I mean, we're almost 10 versions ahead. We're at 0.55.1 plus 119. These are the changes that we definitely have to make, and now we can, well, reload the Gradle changes. Once again, it's going to build. This can take anywhere from a few minutes to, a little bit more. We can see actually that we have an error over here, so we can see could not find Kryptonaut. All right, so we're going to basically check out what that might mean. Interesting, so even though it says beta 51 on the GitHub repository, apparently it is still beta 50, so let's try this and see if the error appears still. That's going to be very interesting. But once again, when you click the load Gradle changes button, it's going to take anywhere from a few seconds to maybe a minute or two, depending on how fast your internet connection is, as it's downloading all of the dependencies and all of that. And it seems like this one is correct at the beta 50, so that's okay. That's of course totally fine. So we're going to actually run with that. And there you go. So for me, it took 21 seconds. I've of course already prepared this. I've already downloaded all of those things. That's why it, of course, is a little bit faster. And now we can proceed to the code. Right, if some of those fabric classes do not work, just be patient. As you can see, now all of a sudden it works. This is just because it has not built everything yet. Sometimes people are a little bit over enthusiastic and they're like, nothing's working. Calm down, right? Take a breather. It's all going to be fine. The thing I also should probably recommend, back up your project. Probably should have said that at the very beginning. Listen, back up your project. It's a good idea because we're going to have to actually change quite a few things in here. You can see the main class actually, nothing's changed. That's great. That's all awesome. But the way I want to go through is basically from top all the way down to the bottom. So we're basically going to, well, we're just going to open the block package custom, and then we're just going to open every single class. And yes, that's how it's going to go. We could also just run client and then get a list of our problems. This also does work. We can see all of this is fine. Our pressure plate, the sapling one is fine. Stairs one is fine. And I believe the only one here that has an issue. So the blaster, even that, right, block entity, everything's working. That is great news, right? The lamp also working. I think the speedy block has something. Yes. And that is the first thing, because what changed is the text, like how text is displayed, basically. Now, the great thing is that it's not actually that complicated on how this now works. Right, so instead of creating a literal text, we now want this to be done a little bit differently. But the lucky thing is it's actually not that complicated. We can just say text.literal, and that is literally the same thing as new literal text. So it really isn't that complicated to change this around. So anywhere where basically you have a text, you know, where you're sending a message to the player or the chat, that would be where you have to change this. But as you see, very easy. And we still have an arrow here in the imports. What you can just do is press Ctrl-Alt-O, and then all of the wrong imports are going to be deleted. Right, and that is the custom package done. Let's go. That's the first one. Let's go. And then let's see the animated block model and the animated block renderer. And you can see, oh no, all sorts of errors. What could this mean? Well, it actually isn't that bad. You can see that the override here has actually red underline. This means that this method is no longer the one that we have to override. Now that's curious, right? It's like, okay, what does that mean? Well, we can just see get model, and you can see it now says get model resource. So there just is a rename of this particular method. So that's all that there is to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, because we have a few different model files that all require these three methods to be overridden, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically copy this. So I'm going to click on it twice, select it, press Ctrl-C to copy the name, then go to my tutorial mod package, press Ctrl-Shift-R to replace in files. I'm going to then paste the get model location in here. And then I'm going to change this to get model resource. That's the new name of this method. And then I can actually see where I can replace it. And I'm seeing, okay, these are all of the models that I have that are geckolit models. So I'm just going to replace all. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to replace all of those occurrences. And you can see now this is no longer an error. Now the same thing is going to go for the texture. This is now no longer texture location, but texture resource. So once again, we're going to change this. So the texture location is going to be changed to texture resource. Right, so here once again, I believe we can just replace all and it should work. We're going to see if another error, you know, comes up, then we're going to see this, of course. And then the same thing goes here. Select it, copy it, go here, press Shift, Ctrl-R, and then paste it in. And this is going to be the get animation resource. There you go. And once again, replace all. There you go. And now all of the model files should be done. They should be fine. And I believe the renderers should also work now. So that actually has saved us quite a bit of work. When it comes to the entities, I believe all of the entities should be fine. The only thing that is that needs some things changed is the block entity right here. And that is because we have a literal text in here. But of course, we've already learned how can we do this? Literal.text, and there you go. Or text.literal rather. And then press Ctrl-Alt-O to get rid of the imports that don't work. And that is it. Modblocks class, do we have something here? We do. What do we have here? Well, we have the translatable text down here in the tooltip for blocks. Once again, here we can just say text.translatable in this case, and there you go. And that's it. Ctrl-Alt-O, and no more errors should be present. So then the blocks are completely done, and that's the first step, and pretty good. All right, let's go into the commands. They can't be that bad, right? No, they aren't actually that bad. Once again, we have some literal text. So we're just going to change this to text.literal. And then here as well, text.literal. There you go. Ctrl-Alt-O. Return home command is done. Let's continue with the set home command over here. Once again, text.literal and pressing Ctrl-Alt-O. And then the commands are done as well. Let's look at the effects. The effects have nothing wrong with them, so we can continue. They also have nothing wrong with them, so we can continue to the entities. The entities. Is everything going to be all right here? Well, first of all, we have, of course, already fixed the errors with the models. When you actually do the replace, you can see the models here are changed. The render here is also changed, and no more errors are present in any of them. So you shouldn't have any errors in those if you change them. The entity itself, no errors to be found. That is great news. Variant, that's just an enum. Shouldn't be anything in there anyway. The mod entities, also no worries at all. So that is pretty awesome. So entities also all working fine. The event also works. And let's continue to the fluids. Honey fluid, everything's working. Mod fluids, everything's working. That is great. And now the items. There's probably going to be something in the items. Yes, of course. So first of all, once again, the model and the model here both work. So that's great news. Let's not go through every item. It's a little boring. The data tablet, of course, and the dowsing rod don't work because, once again, there are texts in them. So text.literal and then Ctrl-Alt-O to get rid of the imports. And then in the dowsing rod, the same thing. Here's a translatable text. So once again, text.translatable. And then below here, there you go, we have text.translatable. And then same here, text.translatable. Then here we have a text.literal. Ctrl-Alt-O, and then both data tablet and dowsing rod are fine. Let's go into the mod items class, this also has one thing, I believe. No, it actually does not. Well, there you go. Everything is working here, so that is perfect. Items are done. Mixin, do the Mixins change? The Mixins did not change. Paintings, did the paintings change? Paintings changed. This is no longer painting motif. It is now painting variant. So this is going to be painting variant. And what we can do is we can basically just select the painting motif, Control R, and then replace it with the painting variant. Let's just say replace all. And then here, you just need to use the painting variant registry, and that should be fine. So as you can see, everything now working in the mod paintings as well. Now the particles did not change as well, so that's great news. Potions did not change as well. Recipes, crazily enough, right? You might expect, oh, this has changed. Nothing's changed over here, so everything's still working fine. The screen all works. The sounds all still work. Util. Now this is going to be an interesting one, because in the utils, the loot table modifiers changed. So you can see callback event here is no longer valid. We now need to use the following event. We need to use loot table events.modify.register. You can see, but the rest can stay the same. And then here, instead of a fabric loot pool builder, we now have a loot pool.builder, this one right here. And then we want to do here, instead of this one, we want to do loot pool builder. With function is now called apply, and the supplier here, the with pool, is now called pool. That's pretty much the only change here. Changing this to loot pool builder, changing this to loot pool.builder, and then changing this to apply, changing this to pool. So nothing crazy going on here at all. Last one, apply, and also pool. There you go. And now those should work totally fine. Once again, to get rid of the wrong imports, Control-Alt-O, and that should be. Let's take a look at the mod registries. There might be something here as well. Yes, the command callback event has just moved somewhere. And then you can see, oh no, the register method doesn't work anymore. That is correct. So first of all, let's get rid of the wrong import here. And let's take a look at the register method. So you can see currently it has a command dispatcher, command source dispatcher right here, and then a Boolean. However, if we go into the event, you can actually see what it now requires. It now actually requires a dispatcher, registry access, and an environment. So this might look, absolutely crazy to you. No worries at all. So what we have is we just need to change the parameters here to this. And then instead of using the dispatcher, we can change this to the server command source command dispatcher. Insane name, I know, but this now should work just the same. And now the register method has no longer an issue. And then the same goes here. Just changing the parameters to this. There you go. And then changing the dispatcher to this one. And now this should also work and no more errors here present. All of the code is, of course, as always, available to you in the description below, GitHub repository and individual gist as well. And now we come to the first one that's a real doozy here, and that is the mod villagers. Now the changes aren't too crazy, but when I did this for the first time, it was a little confusing. So first of all, we no longer need the setup poise method, which is very interesting indeed. And now what we have is we actually have sort of a builder pattern here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, at the top here, so this is actually going to be the villager profession builder.create. And then we don't want to call build. We actually want to do .id. And then this one would require a new identifier of course, tutorial mod.mod.id, and then the name. So this would be what we're doing here. After the ID, we want to call .workstation, where we want to pass in the type. You need to change the type, but that's going to be fine. Then we want to call work sound, pass in sound events dot entity villager work armorer. That's fine. And then we can say .build, close the parentheses, and end with a semicolon. So this is basically what this changed to. Nothing too crazy over here. Now what we do need is we need to change the type over here from a point of interest to a registry key of type point of interest. There you go. Now this one should be fine. And this one will give us an error, but that's fine. But because what we can do is we can replace this, do this in a new line, registry key.of. This is registry.point of interest type key with a new identifier, tutorial mod.mod.id, and then blaster poi. What's important here is that the name here has to match the name here of this particular point of interest. Now, when it comes to registering the point of interest, this actually also is fairly straightforward. I believe that the only thing that has changed is instead of calling the type accessor over here, we're actually making a new point of interest type and then passing in the immutable set right here. So we no longer need to pass in the name here. We just need to do this, and there you go. That is it, and that should be fine. Once again, Control-Alt-O to get rid of the imports, and then we're going to be okay. And we still have one issue, and that is, of course, right here. The poi is no longer called. That's fine. Let's delete that as well. And then we're okay. Now, of course, I left the best for last, and that is all of the world generation. What has changed? What has Mojang blessed us once again with the world generation? So let's take a look at the mod dimensions here. Nothing's changed, so that's pretty good, all things considered. So we're going to be fine, hopefully. Features. Has something changed here? Yes, something has changed here, and that is actually a very interesting thing. And the thing that has changed here is actually the random over here. Because we're using right here, as you can see, Java util random, right? So this is, if we actually open the imports, this is the random that we're using. But actually, Mojang has made its own random. So if we now import this class, you can see it's now importing net Minecraft util math random. So I really don't like the name random in yarn mappings, in Fabric, because in Forge they actually named it random source. I think random source is a way better name, because random, it clashes with the Java random and can be quite confusing, but that is basically what you have to do. You just have to replace the one random with this random. Mod configured features, everything's working. Mod or features, everything's working. Mod place features, everything is working. So that is perfect. The features are already done here. Generation, is the generation still fine? Well, it is mostly fine. We actually have a different way of using biome selectors now, but it actually isn't that crazy. So what we do now is we do biome selectors.include by key. So this would be the same idea here. And then we just say biome keys.planes, for example. And that should do almost the same thing. If you can take a look at this. So this should now spawn it in the plains biome, no longer in any plains biome, but only in the plains biome, if I understand this correctly. And we'll just do the same for the flowers as well. Instead of category, we're just going to say include by key, biome keys.planes once again. And then for the tree, we're going to say the same thing. Include by biome keys.planes. And there you go. The ore generation has not changed, at least not in Fabric. And once again here, this also all works. So everything is working great. Right, and now this is almost all of the code that we need to change. Now come the structures. Did the structures change again? Yes, they did. They did change. Now, first of all, take a look at the sky structures right here. You can see we have, quite a few errors. Now, luckily, Telepathic Grant has already updated their repository to the 119. So we can actually just take this over here. So I'm going to copy this over. Once again, everything available to you in the description below. Get a repository and individual just as well. And the biggest thing that you might see is this codec over here. It's like, oh my God, what is this craziness? Okay, so there's a few changes in terms of what we sometimes have to do. So a codec, in theory, in the simplest possible terms, is just a way of basically reading in a JSON file. As I've said, this is the easiest way to explain it. So this basically, as you can see, we have a field of start pool, and then we have a jigsaw name here. We have a size. So those are all of the fields that we have in JSON files that can then later be basically read in with this codec. That is the easiest way to basically explain this. Now, for our purposes, we actually don't really need to worry about this too much, because if we just want our already existing structures to work, we just need to copy this in, and then we also just need to change it in the following way. So here, we just want to change this to a structure type question mark here, these sky structures, and have these two methods here as well. Now, this is still called in the tutorial mod class, that's fine, and then no more errors should be present here. And then we just need to change a couple of things in the JSON files as well. Now, let's actually go through the JSON files in sort of a reverse order. So we're actually going to go to the data JSON files first, and that is going to be I'm going to start with the structures. So the structures here, this is the NBT file, those are fine. But in the world gen, what we actually want to do is we want to change the name of this folder from configured structure feature. We want to select it, press Shift F6 to change the name, and we're going to call this the structure folder. Structure folder, there you go. And then inside of here, we have the previously called configured structure feature JSON files. Now those have changed only a tiny bit. So if we go in here, what we actually have is, instead of having this config here, we basically want to delete this and this. We need to add a comma after the size. We can then select it all and press Shift Tab to indent it properly. And then we have a few new things that we need to add. Number one is the max distance from center. I'm going to copy this over. Once again, all is available to you, of course. You can see this is the maximum distance of the center that this piece can spawn. And then we have three different things. What we can do is we can replace this adapt noise with these three things. We have the world surface VG over here with the project start to height map. Once again, the comments from Telepathic Grunt can help you understand what the frick is going on here, basically. We have the start height. So now we can actually determine the height of where this particular structure spawns very easily. And then here we have the surface structures step. So this is also totally fine. Now this should be all that we need to do in this case. Now we need to do this for all of our JSON files. So once again, getting rid of the config over here, indenting it properly, then adding the max distance from center after this, and then adding the 3 steps while replacing the add noise. Now here we want to change this to absolute 0 because our JSON only house should spawn at level 0. Same with the Kaupenjoe house. Change this, adding the comma, change this. Now this, in theory, should hopefully be everything that we need to do to change the JSON files for the structures. So those should be structures done. Now, do we need to do anything else in the JSON files? Yes, indeed. There is another thing that we need to do in the JSON files. Now, interestingly enough, this is not in the data JSON files. This is in the asset JSON files. And that is going to be both the model as well as the block stage JSON files for the doors. So if you have custom doors, you're going to have to change those now. Because I don't know why, but Mojang decided, hey, you know what? Why don't we change the doors? If you remember previously, our doors, if we take a look at this, the Jacaranda door, right? We had 2 JSON files for the bottom and 2 JSON files for the top. No worries at all. But for whatever reason, this now, because, more always means better, I guess, or something like that, we now have to have 8 different JSON files. So 4 for the top and 4 for the bottom. That's just how it's going to be. So how I recommend you do this is probably just copy over these JSON files right here. So from the Acacia, right, you can see all of the door ones, you copy those over and you change the names in there. Now I've already prepared this because, just changing the names is a little bit stupid. But yeah, you can see these are now the new JSON files and the old ones we can delete. So this, as you can see, all of the JSON files, they aren't very complicated, but once again, you just have to change a lot of them, especially if you have multiple doors, can be kind of annoying. And then we also have this one right here, the block stage JSON file. Let's override this. This has also changed, of course, because now it's pointing to different model files. I believe the item model file should be fine. This does not need to change because it still points to the same texture, basically. Right, and now we have done it. We have upgraded our tutorial mod project to 1.19. I know, I can hardly believe it myself. And now for the first time, let's see if it works. If any errors come up, of course, we'll be able to fix those. No worries at all. Let's see. So you can see there is actually an error in the structure feature assets right here. This is, of course, in the structure feature accessor right here. Now, this is, of course, because I have never deleted this. I'm not even quite sure. Do I still have this in my Mixin? I do still have this in my Mixin. Okay, then we need to change this as well. Delete this as well here. And then we can try and run client again. And we should find that hopefully no more errors are present. Once again, of course, those errors aren't anything to worry about. Same thing goes for when we get the authorization error. This is also completely normal. This is nothing to worry about, but for the time being, this one right here, right? And also, if it doesn't work for the first time, so if, it runs through, yes, this is an error I have seen previously, and it is an error with the custom portals API. Actually, take a look. There you go, custom portal Mixin JSON. So I'm not sure what exactly is the issue there, but there seems to be some sort of issue with the API. That's very interesting. Let's actually try this for the time being without the snapshot, and let's try 51 without the snapshot. Let's see if this is a version that works, and it seems to be a version that does work. Let's hope that the error there has been fixed. Okay, that does work. That's great. Then let's go and run client again, see if we get that error still. And if yes, then we just have to remove the custom portal API for the time being from the project. That's, it is what it is. That's sometimes can be an issue when you depend on different mods, right? If you depend on a different API, if they change something or something there is broken, then, that can sometimes lead to your project then also not working. But I'm actually quite optimistic here. Let's see. And everything's working fine. This is great. There we are, Minecraft 1.19 Fabric modded. Let's go and let's see. Let's make a new world, of course, right? And there we have run into the first issue. So what do we have? We have a no key monster spawn block list found in some sort of map. Now, what is this? This is actually because the dimension files are not quite correct because they have changed the dimension files once again. So let's go into the data folder tutorial mod, and should be dimension type. Now we actually require 2 new fields over here, and that is going to be the monster spawn light level and the monster spawn block light limit. So those two, I'm just going to set them to 0 for the time being, and that should be fine. And once we've added those, now the world generation should also work. So let's go into the game again and let's see. And here we are. Let's try this again, create new world, and we're still not working. That's totally fine. Let's see. What do we have? Structure type village. Now this is, as you can see, in the structure types. So this should be something in world gen structures. So in our JSON files, let's see. This is absolutely right, because this type right here actually does no longer exist. Apparently the type now has to be Minecraft Jigsaw in this case. We're just going to change this for all of our different JSON files over here. No worries at all. And then let's continue. Let's run it again and see if it works now. Alrighty, let's try this again. Create new world, and we're still not working. That's totally fine. Once again, this is just a matter of sometimes trying it out and looking at this stuff. The JSON files still do not work. All right, let's see this again. We're missing the use expansion hack over here. So this is actually a thing that is missing when you use Jigsaw up here. Then you actually have to use this. There you go. That's going to be okay. So this is going to be in all of our Jigsaw ones. I think it should not matter where we add it, but let's just add it over here. That's going to be fine. And now I'm hoping that it finally works, because if it doesn't, then that would be terrible. All right, let's take a look. Single player, create new world, and hey, we are finally here. Let's see. First 119. Okay, let's do this. 119 world, please work. All right, let's see. Create new world, and let's see if we can actually go in, if everything's still working, and then we're going to be hopefully able to find all of the features that we've added in 118 still working in 119. That would be, I mean, best case scenario, I would say. Alright, so here we are, and you know, immediately spawning next to a custom structure here is very, very good. You can see there's another custom structure and the other custom structure as well. And I would argue that the sky structure probably also works. So that's a great first thing to basically see. So let's take a look at all of our different items. The animated stuff, does it still work? It still animates. Does it still animate? It still animates. That is a great thing to see. Does the dowsing rod still work? Let's see if we can find a thing. There you go. So the dowsing rod still works. The data tablet still works. That's all great. The mithril blaster, that is a big one basically to test out over here. Let's just get a little bit of coal over here, as well as a golden pickaxe to see if this also still works. So we can put the coal in here, golden pickaxe in here, mithril ingot here, and there you go. The mithril blaster also still works. So everything here is still working great. That is what you want to see. The items drop. And we can also take a look at the door. So the door here also still working totally fine. That is also what you want to basically have. Otherwise, you know, that would be, if you didn't change the actual model files, then those would no longer work. So overall, it does seem like everything is pretty much still working the way that you would expect it to. Now, I might have missed one or two things over here, but overall, I think that the bigger part of this is still working. So honestly, that is pretty awesome. And now you are updated to 119. Right, and that would be it for this tutorial right here. And that would also conclude the 118 series. Immediately tomorrow, we're going to jump in with a new 119 series. Now, this is going to be very much shorter than the 118 series, as pretty much most of this, as you've seen in this video, is pretty much the same thing. So we're not going to go through everything again. And I'm also planning on adding a few more advanced topics then towards the middle and end of the 119 series this time. So it's going to be very interesting, and a few changes await us, but I think that it's still going to be awesome regardless. Right, but that would be it. I hope you found this useful and you learned something new, and I'll see you all in the next tutorial. So yeah.